Back again. We have a very, very powerful class today. This is one of the classes that I think literally is one of my favorite classes. Out of all the classes, this is probably my favorite class. If you understand this concept, it's going to help you in your relationships, it's going to help you in business, it's going to help you in every aspect of your life. You could see today, people are having a very hard time hitting goals. You know that 92% of people that make resolutions, they can't even make it. So God created the world in a system where He already told us what we have to go through every single time for creation. So I want to educate you guys a little bit about the beginning of creation. Once you understand this, it's just a matter of plug and play. We know that the number one reason why people are not hitting their goals is because they're emotionally drained out. They keep on trying and they keep on failing. So what do they say? I can't do it. Right? We know that's one of the major things that it's an emotion. That's what it is. It's not reality. I know I have it inside of me, but what happens? My emotions, my past is telling me you can't do it. So what do? You quit. So if we understand this is exactly what actually has to happen in creation, you'll have a whole different view on hitting goals, businesses, etc. across the board. So we know today, God's always either He's revealed or hidden. It's always either He's revealed or He's hidden. And we always see that. Where's God? One day I wake up with all this energy, the next day, where's God today? And it's always this back and forth, peekaboo action that we're constantly going through. And what happens? Some of us get burnt out because we can't handle when the unknown. Okay? So first I want to educate you guys, and I want to explain to you guys that Torah is living Torah. Torah is not a text to read in the past and say, I'm traditional, I read it. You're not living it. That means you're not using the Torah for the rest of your life. What do you think God gave you the Torah for? He gave you just to put it in a book and read it twice a year? No, He gave it to you so you can tap into the energy of the Torah and use it in every aspect of your life. That means people are misusing the Torah. I'm trying to bring it out to people and explaining to them, by the way, whatever you read in those self-help books, here, this is where it is. So you understand the basics and you understand the mechanics of the Torah, you'll have a whole different view. We already know that everybody's into this Kabbalah action today, right? So what is really Kabbalah? Kabbalah is as below, so is above. That means I can't expect a different reality until I match the reality that I want down here above. So I can't have, the way the world works is we have to make the initiation. That means sometimes people are waiting, God forbid, they have a story about life, or they have a situation where they think about life, where this clogs their hearts, or they get stuck in a situation. Helicopters don't come out, spiritual helicopters don't come out and bail people out. Only when the person shifts their mindset and views the situation differently, does that particular person have a shift upstairs. Does everybody understand that? Why is that made? Because otherwise there'd be no free choice. So we have to make the arousal down here in order for an upper arousal upstairs to take place. That's Kabbalah 101. So is below, so is above. So if you're walking around with a frown, don't expect heaven to smile at you. Does that make sense? So is below. That means I have to be mindful of what I'm thinking about. I have to be mindful of what I give meaning to things. I have to be mindful of everything that I can control, because if not, I can't have a different reality above. You have to get that concept. That means the quicker you change your state, the quicker they change the state upstairs. Very important concept. So a person could stay as a victim and he's waiting for a bailout package. It's not coming. It's not coming unless you change your mindset. Very important. So the way God created the world, there was abundance of light. And what happens? There was too much light for the world. What's the purpose of having so much light? Imagine you have the best coach in the world, lahavdil, and no team. What's the purpose? You have no team. So what did God have to do? He had to make it tzimtzum. He had to make a contraction. That's the story of creation. That means there was abundance of light. So what did God do? He had to make it in a contraction. I'm going to use the word tzimtzum. Tzimtzum also means the word contraction. Remember, when I use tzimtzum, it means a contraction. It means just like a contraction could be a setback, a lessening of the light, an obstacle. These are tzimtzumim. It means contractions. That means God had the world, there was so much light, but He says, what's the purpose of my essence if I have no nation to serve me? So He reduced Himself. It also goes to show us today, just like God reduced Himself to create creation, how much more do we have to reduce ourselves? That means if God created a tzimtzum to create the world, to reveal His kindness, how much more do we have to do today? How much more do we have to lower ourselves and be empathetic? Because that's how we become godlike. That means if we're not willing to lower ourselves, then what happens? We can never connect to God. Your ego stands in the way of reality. So humility is the number one membership to get godliness. Without humility, you can never create, because you already have a story. When a person he fails to create, and he has a stuffed heart, which we're going to talk about, I gave the example, it's like having a beautiful hotel, but it's full and you're losing money. So there's no creation there. There's no opening for something new to come. That's the problem why I speak so much about changing beliefs, changing stories, because there's no room for a new opening. And that means if my heart is clogged up with a specific story, right, where's the room to open it? How can I get this hotel to be profitable? I got to kick everybody out and change the prices. Otherwise, nothing happens. So what happens? Negative thoughts clog our hearts. You obviously feel it. When you feel negative, what happens? You feel off. Your emotions take a hold of your head. Your emotions are ruling over your mind. So what happens? We can never create. Now, God created the world. He created Tzimtzum. And right after the Tzimtzum, because He had to make a place where man would have free will. It's very important, this concept. That means, as soon as there was a contraction of light, God created this concept of a Tzimtzum, and then He created a vacated space. That means God's really in the picture, but He removed Himself, lahavdil, from the picture in order for man to create. That is us. Otherwise, everybody would win. If everything would be great, and you would know what choices to make, then what's the point of creation? There's no free choice. Nothing can happen. So man was created with a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara. The word Yetzira means creation. You were born with two Yuds. An animal is born with one. You were born with two. That means at all times I have free will on what I think about. And I have the Yetzer Hara telling me what I don't want to focus on. This is the battle of your life. Between the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. Every day, every hour, every minute, every ounce of your day, it's this constant inner war in your mind. We have to understand that. So any thought that I don't like, what does it do? It's coming from a negative place. Why would I want to attach something that I don't like? So if I'm not mindful of why would I want to think about that? That doesn't serve me. And I attach myself to these thoughts that don't serve me, then I become them. And there goes a person's, God forbid, mental illness, God forbid, failures, etc., across the board. So this is so important to be mindful that you do have a Yetzer Tov and you do have a Yetzer Hara in order for you to have free will. If everybody had a Yetzer Tov, then there'd be no world. What's the point of the world? So we have to understand that. Separate yourself. That means at any time I can change my thinking. Anytime I can focus on what I want and not focus on what I want. That's up to me. I have control of that. There's certain things in life you can't control, and there's certain things you can. What you think about is one thing. So your job is not to say positive thinking, yay. No. Your job is to find light into darkness. Now, God created the world, then He created the Tzimtzum, right, which is this vacated place. That's going to represent our heart. And then what happened? He created the 10 Sfirot, right? These are the next step, is the vessels. But what happens? God created the vessels with too much light, and they broke. Specifically, He created creation to break. So that's where evil comes into place today. That means any evil that we're dealing with today, it was originally good, but it fell. So our job in life is to find the good in evil. To find the good in evil. You have to find the mud that you get in your life, and you have to fight, and find the good in it. And you have to find meaning in it. And you have to find, why did this happen? There's got to be good in it because it was created with good. It just fell onto the other side. That's called the Shvirat HaKelim. That's called the shattering of the vessels. That's failures, that's divorces, that's trauma, etc. So that's something that is a constant thing in our lives, Shvirat HaKelim, the shattering of the vessels. We all go through it. What's the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people? Successful people have a good job of taking those shattered vessels. They take action right away. They learn the mistake, and they rebuild again. The reason why a vessel shatters is one reason. You can't control the light. That's why a vessel shatters. That means the vessel has too much, there's too much light, and the vessel is not big enough for the light. Understand that. So it's not, oh, maybe I'm not meant to do this, maybe I'm not meant to do that business, maybe I'm not meant to do this. No, it's just the vessel broke because the light doesn't have the vessel. Bottom line. So if anything that's not working out in my life, I have to say, what do I need to work on? You understand? It's a different mindset completely. Okay? So now we understand that first there was a creation, first there was a tzimtzum. Remember, when there's a tzimtzum, that means God had to remove himself to create the world. So sometimes when you see in trauma, what's the first thing you ask? Where's God in the picture? How could this happen to me? Right? The person who has trauma, unfortunately, he feels abandoned by God. But remember, in order for creation to take place, God has to remove himself from that picture. That means the light comes to a person after the vessels broke. You understand? We all have to go through shattering of the vessels in life. Everybody has to go through trauma. Everybody has to go through upsets, because God had to create there was no room for creation unless there was a beginning with failure. So what happens today? People say, I'm the failure. Instead of, no, there was not enough light in my vessel, that's why I broke. What do I need to do? I need to learn, what do I need to learn from this situation? And rebuild. Anything but rebuilding is a waste of time, etc. etc. So we have to understand this is part of our creation. This is called the Shvirat HaKelim. Now, after the 10 vessels, then God gave us the 10 Sfirot, and that's how we're able to use the energy of Kabbalah to create. So remember, where I decide what happens in my life is up to me in the vacated space. That means after God reduces light in the world, in order for man to have free will, that's up to a person to decide what he does in that vacated space, which is darkness, etc., etc. That's today, what we're dealing with today. So it seems it could be, for example, could be you start a business, all of a sudden it fails right away. So what do some people say? It's not meant to be. No, that's exactly what was supposed to happen. That means you have to fail to learn. If you look at Ray Dalio, I had a whole book on Ray Dalio, top fund manager in the world, and he says the only way he was successful, it was literally by failing and learning. He understood, I don't know how he got this concept, but in order to build your vessel, you must fail and rebuild. That's the only way to build a vessel. I cannot build a vessel by anything but failing, learning from my experience, and starting again. That's creation. Now, for example, you say a guy today, I want to lose 100 pounds. We all get that inspiration from God, right? I get that gut feeling today, I want to lose 100 pounds. What happens? This guy thinks he's going to lose 100 pounds in 30 days. It's not happening. He doesn't have the vessel to lose 100 pounds in that time. So what happens? He tries for 4 or 5 days. He doesn't make the proper tzimtzum. He doesn't contract his light. And what happens? The vessel breaks, and then he says, you know what? I tried it didn't work. So we all get an idea to do something. The next thing, because just like God wanted to create the world, what did he have to do? He had to reduce it. Now what's next? That means anytime you have something to do, you have the idea, but if you can't bring that idea into practicality, into reduction of light, and make it practical, then you can never create. So if we're not able to have realistic goals and bring down that energy into practicality, we can never create. It's very important you understand that. So remember, the tzimtzum is God had to reduce his light. That means us. Every time we start something, we have to reduce the light. I'm going to give you an example. A lot of times the marriage problems that I've been dealing with people. All of a sudden, the husband becomes religious. The wife is not there yet. Or the wife is there and the husband's not there yet, right? This guy gets an inspiration, right? To fly. And next thing you know what he tells his wife? Tomorrow you need to cover your hair, you need to put a skirt, you need to cover everything. Now, you have to do it now or you're against God. You know what this guy did? He took too much light into a vessel that wasn't prepared and he broke the vessel. Not only did he break the vessel, but he broke the marriage. Because your wife doesn't have the vessel for the light that you have. So if you're not able to show her properly through a reduction of light, through a tzimtzum, Starting for, you know what? Let's do Shabbat together this week. Let's do this. That's how you make it practical. For example, a guy starting a diet, the first thing he should do is not say, I'm going to run 10 miles a day, because he doesn't have the vessel to run 10 miles a day if he's never even walked on a treadmill. So what does he have to do? Step one, cut the Coke, cut sugary drinks. Then he can start creation. So what happens? The minute we get going, the minute we get an idea to do something, if we don't make a proper tzimtzum, if we don't reduce the light and make it practical, what happens? The vessel breaks automatically. So anytime a vessel breaks for us, it's because the vessel, there's too much light and the vessel is not big enough. It's not you're a failure, it's that particular thing at that particular time is not going to work. We could take this example to singles. When you've been married, when you've been divorced, you look at life completely different. Everybody's rushing to get married, right? They're rushing, but they don't understand that if that person cannot even handle himself and he's not being willing to look for other people, what happens? What's a marriage that's broken? Not enough light, the vessel breaks. That means if we don't grow in marriage constantly, if two people do not constantly work on themselves in marriage and they don't grow together, then what happens? Abundance of light in one area, lack of abundance, breaking up of the vessel. So how can I build my vessel? There's one way, is humility. That means when I fall, the first thing I need to do is say, what did I learn from this mistake? And rebuild. To live life thinking that you're never going to have shattering vessels is impossible. It's not realistic. So I would say today, hitting goals is more like a pregnancy, that you have to go through contractions, rebuilding. Contractions, it's not just positive thinking. You almost have to plan your obstacles today. All science is showing you the key to success is small goals, small practical goals. I had a business, for example. I originally had a 20-bed drug and rehab facility. What happens? It was doing good. We were making money, but God wanted something bigger for me. So what did He do? He took those. I had a problem with the landlord, and what happens? Disaster. They canceled the lease. Boom, shattering of the vessels. What do I do now? Do I question myself? That's where free will comes into place, where a person decides what does he do next. Does he quit and saying, oh, why'd you give me this, God? It's not fair. Why'd you do this to me? Does he numb his life into drugs, etc.? Or does he say, what do I learn from this lesson? So what did I do? I had to go rebuild the building, and thank God now it's 56 beds. But if it wasn't for breaking that vessel breaking, I could never recreate a new one. So what happens today, when something breaks, what do? We get upset. No, when something breaks, it's because something bigger, there's something bigger coming. As long as you have faith. So we need to understand that, because if you don't understand that, you can literally have a whole different view of life. You can look at life as God gave you a bad deal, and you can have a completely different life. So, and this is the same thing that happened with the Jews in Egypt. What did the Jews in Egypt? First, what was there? They had to go through the slavery. Correct? In the slavery, what was the tzimtzum? It looked like God left them. Right? It looked like, where was God in the picture? How could you make us become slaves? And then the tikkun is getting out of Egypt. So even today, trauma. Trauma sometimes is built into creation. That means there's some things based on your soul that you're going to have to go through some experiences that you would never plan, but it has to happen to you. And we're not prepared for this kind of trauma. You know, my son, when he was 5 years old, he had leukemia. Nobody planned for my son to have, God forbid, cancer. Nobody plans you for this thing. Nobody planned for me to have a divorce. I wouldn't have planned on this. And the only thing I did plan on is having faith. And if it wasn't for the teachings of Reb Nachman that teaches you resilience, what happens? You lose your faith, and you're done. You leave the religion, you leave everything. So today, the word is resilience. It's how do I find light in darkness. You're going to get hit with trauma, you're going to get hit with failure. You know why? Because that's the way God created the world. He created the 10 vessels with a built-in breakage. So if a couple's not getting along, it's not to say that the couple's broken sometimes. Sometimes it is broken. But usually it's for the both of them to rethink their strategy and build stronger vessels. And you have to go through this constantly. Because in order to create, I must destroy. Something has to be destroyed in order for a new creation. That means for me to have the 56-bed facility, the 20-bed had to be destroyed. I couldn't have just jumped in from the 20 to the 56. So if we don't have self-confidence and we don't have self-worth, what happens? Then that's our story. This is what happened in my life. I never got married. My business failed 10 times, or whatever it is. That's your story because you never found the light in the darkness. So your job, rest of his 101, that he's telling you, Rav Nachman, all day, your job is to find the light in the darkness. Find meaning, because failure is what you make of it. I could look at failure completely different than another person could look at failure. It's up to me to decide what is failure. Doesn't have meaning. Meaning, I decide meaning to things. So if you're anybody who's successful, what do? They get going. They don't plan on things. They just do. They do. They find out what mistakes they made, and they fix, they rebuild. This is business 101. You want to take business 101? You can never plan what's going to happen. The only thing is you can learn from your mistakes. Why? What happened? You get an idea. Next thing you know, you got to put it into action. If that action that you want to do, you don't have the vessel for that, what happens? It breaks. And then what do you need to do? From the breaking of the vessel, then you restart again with a doing it completely different. Why you also have to go through failure is because God created the world to keep you humble. Because if you never failed, you wouldn't be, you would take everything for granted. What do I need to pray for? Everything that goes good for me in my life. But when you have trauma, when you fail, who's waking up to pray the next morning? Who's reading the Garden of Emunah the next morning? Who's doing it? You wouldn't have done it before. So the problem brings you closer to God. That's the way it is. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to get close to God by mistake. I want to wake up early. No, either you're coming through inspiration or desperation. One way or another, you're getting there. You decide which one. So I try to promote inspiration and not desperation. But somehow or another, we find the way we get. I got originally religious through desperation. Because I said, listen, I'm trying everything myself. It's not working. So I have to try it. So, and that's the way the world is created in this constant step. Very important. So, what do we do when we have the tzimtzum? That's the key to victory or defeat. Rav Nachman says in lesson 49 that what happens? Because a person remember, we have our souls, believe it or not, your soul is made to fly. That means your soul is made from God. It doesn't have limits. What happens? We put a lot of garments on our soul. We put a lot of schmutz on our soul. So what happens? It doesn't look like my soul looks like I'm lost in the city. But if you get rid of the garments and you get rid of all the coverings on your soul is supposed to fly, and you're supposed to get every single answer inside. You should. If a person's connected to prayer, he doesn't need to ask 100 people what to do. His heart tells him exactly what to do. That's the advantages of keeping controlling your emotions. Rav Nachman says here in lesson 138. That's why if you understand, if you can sleep through this, God bless him. I'm only telling you how creation happens. If you're interested, you're not interested. Lesson 138. He says the essence of godliness is in the heart. Remember, this is a very important line. The essence of godliness is in your heart. That means whether you should marry a guy, whether you should do this business, your heart's going to tell you the answer. Why? Because it says God placed wisdom in your heart. What do you mean, put wisdom in my heart? Put wisdom in my head. What does my heart have to do with my head? The bottom line is, if my emotions are taking over my head, I can't even hear. I'm clogged up. I can't even hear the voice. It's like you're going to Orlando, but the GPS, you put the music so loud that you can't hear the GPS. The GPS is telling you got to go here. But what happens? You want to put so much music on, you can't even hear what your heart is telling you. So when you guard your emotions, that means you always want to be open. Why? Because if I'm open, I can receive. If I'm closed, I can't receive. There's no room for creation to take place. Does that make sense? So guarding your emotions is probably the key to everything. That means, what signal can I get from God if I'm angry? It takes me 5 hours to recover from cortisol attacks. How can I get God's message from this situation if my emotions are taking over my life? possible, right? Because what happens? Your emotions, what do? When a person has negative emotions, they clog his creation. The heart represents creation. So if my heart is blocked, it's clogged, I can't make room for anybody else. So it's very important. So whether we're mindful with our emotions, it could be the key to you getting the answer you want. I spend 99% of my decisions they come with prayer. Because nobody's got the answer from me but me. I know that the answer is inside of me. Why would I go spend time where another person maybe he doesn't know the answer? I know the answer is in me. And I know the answer is created through prayer. So when you know that, what do? You spend 99% of the time asking God for help and 1% worrying. Other people spend the opposite, right? 99% worrying and 1% asking God. That's a formula for disaster. That means if you're spending 99% of overthinking and 1% praying, the formula doesn't allow success. There's no room for success. So you have to change it the other way around. That's why it says, prayer to God is my life. Why do you think Rav Nachman says first, forget about religion. First connect to a relationship with God. Then we'll worry about the religion. Because if you don't have a relationship with God, one bad day will knock you out. You're gone. You're gone. You lose money in the deal, you're finished. And that's what happens today. People lose money in business, goodbye. First one they say goodbye to is God. Meanwhile, they could have had an opening for that business. That could have been the shattered Kaleid. It could have led them in another direction. I can't tell you today that every single business that I've had today, it was due to one failure in another business. Every one of them was due to failure in one business that I figured out a different way to do it, and I got into something else. It didn't come from Amazon. It came through darkness, and I had to transform it into light. Every single one across the board is a story of life. So if you're not good at looking for light in darkness, it's going to be very dark. That's our job in this world. Because we know it came from evil. Evil originally came from good. So there has to be good in evil. We just have to find it. We have to look for it and look and look and look, and that's our job in this world. Because believe it or not, God created the world to reveal His compassion, not to punish people, but what happens today? People, they sin, they go hide. What are you going to do? Where are you going to hide? Where are you going to hide? Where everybody else is hiding? There's nowhere to hide. The best thing is confess what you did and get closer to God. So when we do good things, what do? We bring God's light closer to us. When we do the opposite, what do? We obscure the light. When we obscure the light, we're not able to connect, and we don't have the answers for what we need. So lesson 138 says, someone with a pure heart, that means an open heart, not a heart stuffed with negative emotions, can, as it says, my heart is hollow with me, can know future events. You will have intuition, you will understand what you need to do in life. That means the decision is in you. It's in your heart. Your job is to make sure that if this is your antenna, you don't want to muddy it up with garbage, with negativity, with not forgiving people. You want to let everything go. That means I should not have one suppressed emotion, because this suppressed emotion is going to block my signal from getting the answer that I need. So what would I do? Everybody's forgiven. God bless the world. I'm gonna take energy in my heart, which I need for my life, to give it away to people because this one wronged me. Never would I do that. Because what am I risking? Me. I'm risking my heart not getting the proper signal. If I walk around with a clogged heart, what's going to happen? I'm going to walk around upset, sad. I'm going to miss opportunities in life. So what happens when you get a breakup from a boyfriend, for example? What do? You walk around sad. How could this do? Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe he didn't love me. Blah, 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 blah. You clogged your heart. Or you could say, you know what? This is what God wants. It's not meant to be. This is my shattering of the vessel. Let me create what I want now. That's what you're supposed to do. So it's okay to have those rough days. It's okay to have trauma. But you have to be able to, there's a time for trauma, there's a time to move on. So again, it's not easy. Obviously, I went through major trauma, but the opening was created only when I decided to unclog my heart and allow a new creation to come into place. So if we understand Kabbalah, we understand God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yud Kei Vav Kei. The last one is Hey. The last Hey represents Emunah. So what happens? if a person clogs up his heart, that last hey becomes a dalid. So what are we doing when we're doing teshuvah? What are we doing? Teshuv hey. What am I trying to do? I'm returning the hey. I'm going from a dalid to the hey. This is something that we're going to go through daily. We're going to go from a dalid to the hey. Why? Because God's going to be revealed at 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock. Where's God? I was having such a great day. Next thing you know, I lost my whole inspiration. Why am I feeling like that? Then you have to question yourself. Why are you feeling like that? Question the thinking. Don't question God. When you question God, you get nothing. When you question your thinking, you get everything. Your job is to question your thinking constantly. Why do I feel like that? Oh, I know why I'm upset. I'm upset because I had an expectation that wasn't met. Okay, let me appreciate what they did do for me. Otherwise, we walk around with no energy, and that's where the energy is taking. The energy is... There's not a bunch of Jews running marathons here. I haven't seen 100 Jews. There's marathons in their mind. You don't see people. How many Jewish marathon? 10. How many people go to marathons? You're marrying a marathon in your mind, from emotional overthinking, etc. Maybe because it was your mother. Whatever it is, you're born to overthink. We have to cut patterns. We don't want to overthink, because we overthink, we clog our hearts, we clog creation. So our job, Rav Nachman says here, when a person thinks evil thoughts, he clogs up his heart, which is the aspect of his creation, because creation has to come into the heart. Remember, I have to have, if I'm going to start a business, and next thing you know, I try 3, 4, 5 times, next thing you know, there's 5 headaches in the business. What am I going to think? It's not meant to be. And what am I going to do? I can't take this business, too much for me. So what happens? I stop. There's I clogged up my creation. Instead of maybe I needed 10 steps to go. Maybe I needed 15. So every time you fail, it's only to teach you that your vessel didn't have enough light, couldn't handle the light that you wanted. All you need to do is go back, figure out what you need to fix, rebuild the vessel, and move on. That's business, relationships, life 101. The problem in life, too much light, not enough vessel. That's the problem. If you can take it, I try to bring these concepts in a very, very simple way. So what do I need? If you look at the 10 sfirot, Chachma, Bina, Dat, Chesed, I need to use those 10 sfirot to tap into energy. So sometimes I'm too hard on myself. So I need to be good with myself. There's times where you fail in business, that's not the time to call yourself a chamor. That's the time to say, you know what, keep on going. Learn. What are you learning from this mistake? Either you win or you learn. What are you learning from this mistake? The vessel shattered for a reason. Maybe the vessel shattered to give you new light. That God wants to give you something better. But what happens? God is only where you let him in. If your creation is clogged, there's no opening for God, because you've already created that ending. That's why the problem is like I said, the bigger the ego, the smaller the perception. When I don't have perception, I can't receive. Because my ego, there's no room for something new to come in. There's no room for a big creation. So unless a person becomes humble and says, you know what can I do to change? How can I fix this? He never gets that new creation. And this is very sad, because there's a lot of people living in the past. When's your last date? Oh, this problem happened to me 1999, July 7th. Creation's over. That's done. That's his creation finished. 2017, this happened. Creation's done. And I could say, I've been through divorce. I've been through terrible things. But my creation did not stop. That means when you have problems, don't go down with them. That's what we're trying to tell you. Don't go down with your problems. It's not that creation has to happen, and you have to go through failure. So we look at today and we see, wow, what's God doing to it? Look at this person, God forbid that person, look how he has. They stay there. We don't want to stay there, because you have potential. Your soul is happy when you give and grow. If I'm not giving and growing, I'm naturally not going to be happy inside. I'm going to look for artificial happiness somewhere else, whatever you call it, whatever happy you want to call it. That means if I'm growing and giving, it's an internal happiness. I don't need an external happiness. But if I'm not growing and giving, guess what? Where am I getting the dopamine from? Food, cocaine, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, drug of choice. So that's how we know if we're living in our soul state, is if it's an internal issue. It's not an external issue. It's nothing wrong with having nice things. I'm all for it, but it shouldn't be a chase. It shouldn't be a chase. So Rav Nachman says here that the person spoils his creation. So our job is to go from a dalet to the hay. That means if I'm going through the day, I have to go from a dalet to the hay maybe 10 times a day. My mother-in-law's coming, dalet. You know what? She's only coming for a week. That's a hay. See, I took a positive spin to that. That's just an example. My wife is upset at me. She sold this to me. You know what? But she does do this for me. I just made a hay out of it. You understand? My husband wronged me. You know what? But look what he did last week for me. That's a hay. All of a sudden, you took the dalid and you questioned the thinking, and it became a hay. Once the hay is there, then it becomes Yud Kei Vav Kei, and that's Hashem in your life. Otherwise, it's Yud Kei Vav Dalid, and a stuffed heart, and emotionally take it over. It's like all or nothing, this situation. But what do you need to do when you're in that breaking of the vessel? You need to grab onto one thing, is you need to have emunah. So what is emunah? Emunah is first I have to believe it, then I will see it. You see today the world, if they don't see it, they don't want to believe it. It's opposite of our faith. The whole point is it's not emunah if you could see it. And how do you know if you have trust in God? If the minute you fail, you jump back on the horse again and you go try again. That's how you know if you have faith, if you have trust. Trust is not something you talk about. Trust is something you do. So if a person's smart, he would say, you know what, I want to lose 30 pounds. But you know what, I failed in the past, because what happens is I didn't make the proper tzimtzum. I didn't reduce the light in appropriate matters. So first, instead of saying I'm going to lose 30 pounds in 30 days, I should set a more realistic goal, like maybe 5 pounds a week. And let me realize that in those 5 pounds in the week, I might relapse 2 times. That means I'm planning already the tzimtzum. I'm planning already the obstacle. This is not negative thinking. This is reality. See, when people have too much positive thinking and then get hit with something, oh, I guess it doesn't work. It's not working. And then they start saying, I'm not good enough. So what happens is when we fail to take the next step, we lose trust in ourselves. And that's how little by little, when you lose trust in yourself, there goes your self-worth. And then when you have no self-worth, instead of loving yourself, you lose yourself. Come to my rehab. Every single one of those people there, they're struggling from failures that they said they're the failures instead of they really just had a failure in their life, and all they had to do is learn the lesson, rebuild, but they became the failure, and then they said, that's my life. So when you don't love yourself, you lose yourself. And you lose your self-worth, and then you do very foolish things. So without emunah, it's not something, I love emunah sticker on my door. No. Emunah, you need emunah because you're not going to see the light because God is removed from the picture in order for you to have free will. You understand? In order for creation to take place, God had to remove himself from it. So a man can co-create. So through your thinking, you can either create what you want or create what you don't want. That's up to you. If you create what you want, you build a new vessel. If you create what you don't want, what happens? You clog up your heart, you stop creation, and there's no creation, no more. Party's over, the guy's life is stuck. There's nothing worse than unused talent. So if you know what the price for try, you don't even know what the price for not trying. So a person has to go through, sometimes he realizes, I really want to do this, but I'm afraid to fail. Guess what? You have to fail. So what you need to do in life is say, I want to fail fast often. Because the quicker I fail, the quicker I get the lesson, the quicker I move on, the quicker the vessel. So you don't look for comfort, and you don't look for decision making, should I do it, should I not? Let's go, let's try it. If it doesn't work, do this. If it doesn't work, do that. And that's a constant level. So let me ask you a question. If a person is in this state, how could he not be attached to God? He has to be attached to God. Because all he's doing is recreating vessels. So when he has that failure, what does he do? He opens up his mouth and asks God, God, help me. Show me what I'm doing wrong. Show me what I'm doing wrong with my marriage. Show me what I'm doing wrong in business. Show me what I'm doing wrong in whatever it is. That's why the vessel broke. He doesn't blame God. Why would you blame God? How's that going to help you? Blaming God is the ego. God did this to me. This rabbi pissed me off 20 years ago. I'm not really, okay. What is that? How's that going to help you? How's that going to help you? You still got to get to work. It's your vessel, not the rabbi's vessel. Nobody else can control you. So that's something we need to understand. So back to this lesson 138, that he's saying here that God tells Moshe he has placed wisdom in the heart of all those who are wise. This is a very big concept. That means the wisdom is in your heart. It's in your heart, and your job is not to stuff it up. You have to be so in control of your emotions. I know it's hard for Moroccans to be in control of their emotions, but you got to start trying to go to mindfulness, do something. But you got to control your emotions, because without emotional control, you don't have emotional intelligence. Without emotional intelligence, you can never get the hint that God's trying to tell you. This is not something that, I have to work on my emotions. I get angry once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. Those 3 weeks, you're stopping creation from coming. So you have to be careful of what you're putting. Just like a guy, if you're in good shape, you're so careful what you eat. You check the ingredients. You make sure there's nothing that you don't want in your body. Same thing. I don't want this in my heart. Why would I want this in my heart? It's going to stop my creation. And that's why people are not hitting goals, because they already have a belief about it. All actions are belief driven. Bottom line. If you believe you can and you believe you can't, you're right. Henry Ford said that. That means every action is based on a belief. That means if I believe that praying to God is the key to my everything, what am I going to do? I'm going to wake up in the morning, pray to God, and ask Him for clarity, ask Him to help me make bigger vessels. If I believe that prayer doesn't work, what am I going to do? I'm not going to do it. That means if I don't change my belief about something, I can never change the action. Changing an action without a belief, it's not going to work. So now I have to think, what do I do now after this class? I look at all the broken vessels where I quit, and I said, thank you, God, for breaking my vessel. I'm ready to recreate what I want. So you have to go back into all the past, all the failures, all the things that you quit because you said, maybe I'm not good enough, and you have to go back. Because the only way that God created the world is through a tzimtzum, then He created a shattering of the vessels, and then the tikkun. The shattering of the vessels has to happen for any creation to take place. A creation could be a business, a creation could be anything in your life. That's creation 101. That's goals 101, marriage 101. For example, if you're about to get married to somebody, what are you doing? You're creating a new creation. So what happens? There has to be a shattering of the vessel. Sometimes you get into a fight. You have a fight in the engagement. That's only that God wants to tell you, listen, if you're fighting in your engagement, you need to have a closer bond, because when you get married, the price is much heavier. So make sure you got the fundamentals straight in your engagement before you jump into marriage. Is it a bad thing? Absolutely not. It's chesed, and it's a warning sign telling you, you better make sure you get the fundamentals when you're engaged, because when you get married, there's a whole different world out there. And we know people are suffering from divorces. I talk a lot about classes about men having self-control and self-confidence in marriage, because if you don't have that, you have nothing. You can't control your emotions, you're done. Can't do nothing. You'll never be open to receive. That's why it's situations like that. So he's saying here that in lesson 138, that you'll know the future because the answer will be in your heart. How? Because you're going to keep your heart open. And when your heart is open, you get the answer. You get everything. How do I get my heart open? I have to get out of my state that I'm in. I have to be careful all the time. Well, how is my heart feeling? Remember, the heart is the seat of the emotion. So now when I have emotional outbreaks, now when I have trauma, now when I have failures, how do I view it today? Shattering of the vessels, I don't have enough light. Let me work on getting more light. That's what your answer should be. It's a simple attack. Shattering of the vessels, what's next to do? I had to go literally, for my rehab business, I had to go through 15 shattering of the vessels. It didn't come right away. One of the partners that I originally did it with, he died in an overdose. Talk about doing a business. Next thing you know, you're about to do the business, the guy has an overdose. So you could say, God, what are you doing to me? But inside of me, I said I knew I had to do this. So the answer was always there. But you imagine starting a business, the guy passes away from an overdose. Talk about trauma. Talk about this. So if you don't have the spirituality, and if you're not tapping into your soul, you get hit with trauma. Bye bye. You don't have the resilience to make it. Look at even Starbucks. You know how Starbucks started? They started off as an Italian bistro. They had Italian waiters, and it was a high-end Italian. They changed the whole model because it was a failure, and it became Starbucks today. What today? But it originally didn't start it started as some Italian concept with waiters and something high-end. Broken vessel. Everything starts with a broken vessel, recreate. Broken vessel, recreate. This is life, and this is something you're going to have to do with. So now what we do today is we plan the broken vessels. We plan the sharing of the vessels, and we always ask God humbly, how do I strengthen myself? That means successful people, they take shots quicker, they don't spend time planning, they do. You plan a little bit, but you don't sit there and wait and not make a decision for 2 years. What should I do? Because you're only going to get to know what to do when you make the decision. And that's the key. It says, happy and successful people spend less time planning and more time acting. They get into the world, try new things, and they make mistakes and they learn, they make mistakes and they learn, they make mistakes and they learn. So what? I failed. So where's the enemy today is the ego. The ego says, how could you fail? What are people going to say about you? Don't do it again. Better to shield your ego, never take another risk. This way nobody will say you failed again. Meanwhile, you could stop your whole dream. So what's the problem? We're worried about what people say. Who cares what people say? Who cares? What are people going to think about me when this engagement didn't work out? They're going to think that I'm never going to get married. So what happens? They make ridiculous moves. They go for the wrong guys. What is the enemy? The enemy is the ego. If I listen to my soul, I have everything. I continue. The ego tells me, what is this guy going to say about you? Who cares? I fail, I begin again. I fail, I begin again. I have resilience. That means there's no time for stories, because stories clog the heart. And once the heart is clogged, there is no new creation. If there's no new creation, there's no opening for God in my life. And that's my life. So this is I don't want to overload you guys with too much things. So you have to start embracing obstacles, embracing failure a different way completely. I failed, I'm not the failure. If I say I'm the failure, there goes my self-esteem, everything. If I say I failed, because that's what happens in creation. God created the world with a built-in failure. That means this was already built in. God already created you that you were going to fail at certain things in your life. Your job is only to have free choice. Free choice, and what do you do with the failure? That's where the Dalet versus the Hey comes into place. If you go saying I'm the failure, you become a Dalet, your heart gets clogged. If you say, you know what, I'm going to find the light in this darkness, you become the Hey, you bring back God's name, and you recreate. So even in a marriage, for a marriage to get better, you have to have fights. The fights are because at that level, remember, we always have to grow. And remember, you need to have two people on the same page. If you don't have two people on the same page, then one guy doesn't want to deal with getting the relationship better, then that's what happens. The relationship breaks. So two people have to be in the same mind frame of Emunah and saying, it's okay. Doesn't mean the relationship's a problem. It means we had a tzimtzum in the relationship. And that tzimtzum is only for us to get the hint to rebuild. It's not to destroy it. So you have to separate. Your emotions are telling you, my relationship is a problem. My logic is telling me I have a problem in a relationship. Doesn't mean the relationship is a problem. That's emotions. You understand? Big difference. Yeah, you're going to have problems in your relationships. Many. If you don't, then it's literally impossible. Especially if I'm not going to joke. So you constantly have to go through these things. This is a story of life. So when I speak to people, they get stuck in the places. That's why Rabbi Rush says when a person quits, it's the biggest form of arrogance. I don't like to tell that to people. Obviously, I'm very sensitive. But it's, why should you not try again? Why do you think? What does the person say? Well, I tried already 5 times. It didn't work. That's enough for me. God gave me too much than I can handle. What is that really telling God? Telling you arrogant. Because you thought you should have had it in the bag already. Why didn't you have it in the bag already? So what are you saying? And God's really preparing you from a bigger fall. He's giving you a vessel so strong. That means practically today, if we don't humble ourselves, we can never put the seed in the ground. And if we don't put the seed in the ground, the tree never grows, and we never become one. All right, that's today's class.